two honorable guests who have been continuously serving our country, first by being a part of our Navy and now being associated with Quantian Powertrain, which is promoting the indigenous R&D of axial flux motors. Joining us today are Commander Ramesh Lakhada and Commander KV Narasimham. Both are esteemed guests, are electrical engineers by training and were responsible for the efficient and safe operation of the ship's electrical systems, which included power generation and distribution, weapon systems, and communication equipment. They have also held consulting roles within the Navy. We would like to welcome both of you, sirs, on behalf of Gyanaki and today's participants. Today we will be talking about motor technology and the interesting journey of Quantian so far. Uh, Welcome, sirs, and over to you, Mr. Harsh.
Hello, good morning, and a very, very warm welcome to you folks. It's a pleasure to have you on board. Before we begin, would you like to address the audience, maybe say a few words before we get going with the questions?
Uh, I think Harsh, you can finish, then probably we'll take it on. So the flow
Sure,
will continue because it's
sure,
the
that
same.
works. Okay, so I'm pretty much going to directly dive into the questions. I hope that's okay. And the first one is very much to do
Oh,
with.
no, Harsh, I think, okay. I meant,
Harsh,
okay.
we have to
Let
go
me run
through
through
the.
the, yes. I think mistook what you meant. So, okay,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
So we will take over the
sure, go ahead.
initial intro part so that we give a bird's eye view, and then probably the questions can allow for a freewheeling discussion. Uh,
Sure, that's fine.
okay,
Go ahead.
good morning, everybody. I mean, it's always nice when you are welcomed and spoken warmly about, especially considering that we are sitting in Delhi and it's been chilly beyond the norms. And thankfully, for the last few days, we've been getting some sunlight coming in, but yes, it is still chilly. So, on that note, thank you so much, Mr. Malani, for having afforded this opportunity. And it's actually very interesting. I would not say noble, but definitely it is something which will trigger many brains who are looking at information and knowledge and as to what things are happening globally as also in smaller pockets like us. We are a startup in one corner of the country doing something, which ultimately leads to everyone to synergize and create value. So cutting to the chase, we are Quantion Powertrain. We are incubated in IIT Delhi. The name Quantion essentially came up with quantum and electrons, so ion. So that's how it was, a small and ion joining together, and we formed Quantion. We are looking at designing and supplying axial flux motors for EV applications and also extending it beyond because motors, as they are analogous everywhere, we see whether in our homes, in our industries, in our vehicles now, even replacing the IC engines can be used elsewhere as well. So the technology that we are developing is sector agnostic, and we intend to move in complementary areas as we go along. Now, coming back to both of us, this is just a screenshot of few ships that we have had the opportunity to serve. And whatever we are today is because of what forces invested us into us when we are young, 18 years old. Probably Lakda sir goes even way back. He is a Sainik school military school alumni. So we are in front of you today because what we have learned over our 2 decades of service in uniform and the training time before that. And definitely it's been an honor to continue what we started as youngsters. Now, submarines, if all of you, they invoke romanticism when you look at it, the thrill and the adventure. But at the bottom line, it is an electric vehicle. There are batteries which power it. Of course, the batteries, they keep surfacing for charging. But at the end of it, it is an electric vehicle. And they've been there for all these years and serving a purpose. So that is how, when you see dispassionately, electric vehicle as a name has been existing for a while. And it's just that now it is coming on to the civil street where the numbers are huge. And that's why all the attention it is garnering. So why we chose machine design? Essentially, being in service, you get to do a plethora of things, which gives you a lot of exposure and experience and technical know-how, which ultimately adds up to give you a complete product. Not that I would say complete product, but yes, it gives you a holistic view. So towards that end, in ships and submarines, low frequency analysis is very pivotal, especially signature management and other things play a big role when it comes to maintaining stealth at sea. So we got exposure to low frequency analysis, which is what is the key when it comes to machine design. So that is how it became a natural extension. And with EVs coming into the market, we found that it was something where you could contribute. So in 2018, we were incorporated, and we have filed a patent for one high regenerative braking motor, for which the work will start probably in the course of the year. We are also working on another novel e-axle concept, which also is something for which we are filing a patent, which I will just touch upon later on in the talk. So now electrical vehicles have caught the fancy of everyone because it virtually gives you a flexibility. IC engines meant that you needed engines which always were a bottleneck, and they were not the most efficient machines, so to say. Electrical motors, on the other contrary, are one of the most efficient setups that we have, and it has been serving a purpose. So if you see the architecture, you'll have to pardon me, it seems there's some glitch. My slides seem to be auto moving on. So that's why I'm going back and forth. Yeah. So coming back to the architecture, if you see, the genesis has been in this manner where now we are heading on to P4 and maybe even going ahead to P5. Essentially, you are moving the power to the drive axle, or in fact, moving forward into the wheels. Essentially, it simplifies your architecture. The whole existing architecture was to support engine which cannot produce high torque at low RPM. So you have to run the engine at a higher RPM. Consequently, you need a gearbox. And since it's not very wieldy, it is somewhere off, you need a transmission line. So all these things finally add up to losses. Whereas electrical vehicles give you an option of countering it. Whilst radial flux motors have presently been aping the IC engine structure, where you still use a high RPM motor, you're either using a reduction gear and then using transmission lines. You have an option of moving into the wheel. So this is how the architecture presently is implemented. Of course, there are various variations. In our concept, we want to move into the wheel, which is probably now being called as a skateboard configuration. Essentially, it simplifies your structure. You have a battery bed, you have a controller, you have your wheels, which power. I mean, if you go back, Industrial Revolution was triggered by the wheel. So ultimately, life is coming full circle, and we moved away from the wheel. We achieved something, and courtesy electrical vehicle, we are moving back into the wheel. So does this bring a unique proposition? I think these are all self-explanatory. I would not hover much. But the first point is critical, that the transmission line, any form of transmission line, introduces certain losses. So by moving into the wheel, whatever be the challenges, that is one element that goes out the window. So these have been the latest, some of the people who last year raised a lot of funding. They're all pursuing the skateboard configuration in which they're trying to move into the wheel. In fact, RE was in the news recently when Mahindra signed an MOU for manufacturing products for them. Recently, if you follow the news, Lordstown is a company which is US based, which went to the market to raise about 200 million, landed up raising about 600 million. Their order book for about 100,000 vehicles is full. And they use an in-wheel motor, 4 of them powering individual wheels. So coming back to what we are doing now, but this is the axial flux motor. On the left is the concept that we started. On the right is the first prototype that we have tested. And going forward, I will just briefly touch on how it is different from the radial flux machines. Typically in a radial flux machine, if you see on the left side, the flux lines emanate from the stator, move along the radial line towards the stator. On the contrary, in axial flux, they are along the axis of rotation. So what happens is, in a typical motor, if you see, your rotor diameter is very small and it's cylindrical. So the area of interaction for flux is fairly limited. Whereas in axial flux, since it is along the surface, you get a better and larger surface area, which is what helps you to generate more power, because in a motor, the more the flux, the more the power. So this is just another illustration of the manner. Left is the motor that we usually see everywhere. Right is the one which is the yokeless motor, I mean axial flux motor, which are also called as pancake motors. Essentially, the surface area for a same diameter in axial vis-a-vis radial is about 5 to 6 times. So that's how power dense these motors can be. And this is what we are trying to tap into and take the design forward. Now, this is just another illustration which gives you a clear idea that in axial flux, your torque is directly proportional to the square of the radius. Whereas in the case of a radial flux, it is directly proportional to the radius. And you can use CRGO material, which gives you an additional 25 to 30% advantage for the same material. And CRGO, incidentally, is used in transformers, which are the most efficient machines that we know, where efficiencies of 96 and 97% are the norm. And the single biggest stumbling factor for this technology has been lack of manufacturing, because I will just touch, they've been there for a while. It is not that axial flux machines have not been there, but they've been in form factors which have not entirely been the most efficient. That's why they didn't have much horizontal proliferation. So if you just observe this slide for a moment. On the left is the radial flux, is what we all know. The stampings are symmetrical. In the center is the yoke axial flux, which is still a bit easier to manufacture because there is a back iron which is facing you on the screen. On the extreme right is the yokeless design, which we are trying to work on, in which it is actually a segmented stator which is held together. So the challenge becomes a bit daunting there. And the biggest challenge here is, if you notice the slide, the stack has got lamination sheets which are all cut in different shape. So this is a tooling nightmare. And this was the single biggest challenge for axial flux machines so far. That's why people went into powder metallurgy and they would laser cut it, making this absolutely very expensive. So axial flux machine remained confined to aerospace and missile and defense applications because the bandwidth to absorb the cost was there. But as a commercial product, there were challenges, which now we have with our typical Indian jugaad now sorted out. So we are good to go insofar as the stamping is concerned. Rest everything are a bit challenging, but manageable. If you see, this is how a stator looks like. You have individual slots which have to be held in place, and then thereafter the stator is ready. So a physically probable problem statement has got material solution. So going forward, rest of the things you can sort out. So if you see, another advantage the axial flux machine gives is the winding. On the left is the radial flux winding, which you have all seen. It's like a jungle. But on the right, you see is the axial flux winding, wherein you can get excellent fill factors and very, very compact. So this also helps in making axial flux machines more power dense because you are able to use the copper area maximum. So just to once again go over the basic advantages that axial flux offers: no end turns, so less heat; yokeless stator, which allows you for the shortest flux path. You can have configuration in which you can put two rotors, which makes it even more power dense. Cross-sectional wires you can use, which makes the fill factor very high. And the size of conductor that you use is much, much thicker than what is used in radial flux. So the basic problem of a winding in which the low insulation happens because your winding goes off is virtually history here. It will never happen. Concentrated winding, as I mentioned, gives you very high fill factor. And the ability to use grain-oriented steel is one of the biggest advantages that axial flux machine gives, because for the same weight of iron, you will get 30% more flux. So that's a huge, huge improvement, and sizing which is reduced, which is helpful for electrical vehicles. Now, this is just a comparison. If you see, the BMW i3 motor has got a power density of 3 kilowatt per kg. A similar Magnax motor will be at 12 kg. So the form factor reduces by 4 times. So that is the kind of advantage that one can achieve using an axial flux yokeless design. So now I just request Commander Lakra to take over and briefly share on how we go about the motor flow design, and then probably we'll just wind up.
Yeah. So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will just briefly cover that. How do we decide that which motor to have? How do we quantify it? Then how do we plan our work? How do we do things analytically? And then thereafter we get down to making it into workflow, in which I tackle right from sizing it to the requirement that we have, to going to electromagnetic design, going back and forth. So I'll just briefly cover that. So typically we see that for electrical vehicle, how do we decide that what motor to going for, whether it is a permanent magnet or induction or SRM, axial flux or radial flux, frame motor, hub motor. So high RPM, low RPM. So all these factors are decided by a particular application, because the way two-wheeler needs a performance and range is different than somebody who is using the same two-wheeler for fleet to somebody who is using for personal use. Similarly, the way a passenger vehicle needs output from motor is different from the way a commercial vehicle needs it. Uh, go back to the previous slide, Naseem. It is all listed here. I need to know that what kind of starting dog I need, what kind of weight I need, what kind of speed I need, then what kind of hysteresis overload I need, and what kind of efficiencies I need. So I just combine all these factors first. I write it down, and thereafter I go through the actual dimensioning it. Next slide, Naseem. Yeah. So then thereafter, once we know that this is the application that I have it on mind, then I see that what kind of weight it is going to have, because as we know the Newton law of motion and other dynamics of motion, it has to be translated to a graph, and that graph should give me what is there on the right side after the driving cycle analysis, that this is the torque that I need for the peak performance, and this is the torque I need for a continuous operation, and that I have to map it with different speed that I have, what kind of, whether I'm going to go for a direct drive or a gear drive, a single reduction gear or a multiple reduction gear. So once I figure that out, I would have covered my entire driving speed range that I have it on mind. I also need to see that it is to be driven on a hilly road, on a plain road, or it's a off-road vehicle. What kind of drag it is going to have when it comes to high speed. So that is where the air drag becomes very important. What kind of wheel it has got, uh, what kind of flexibility I have within that particular range to go for up and down in wheel. And depending on these three, then I calculate three different forces which have to be overcome. And these forces are the aerodynamics, as we know, and the basic is rolling resistance from the road. The formula is given. Then if I have to have a gradability, that also has to be added, and what kind of acceleration I need at a different speed performance. So when I combine all these forces, these have to be overcome by the motor, either with the manipulation with a gear or in a direct drive configuration. Next slide. So that is where, once I figure out all these things and once I have my torque speed requirement, then thereafter power will play, because as we know from the law of conservation of energy, that energy that I need to have a particular application, I need to give a higher battery power, or my battery system should be able to give me more energy. So with that in mind, it is a torque and speed curves become very important. Thereafter, I get down to the dimensioning. I see, okay, this is like in my case, if it is an in-wheel motor, straightway, as Narasimhan has covered, that dia advantage is cube of when it comes to torque. It is directly proportional to cube of the diameter. Like every diameter that I increase, it gets multiplied in terms of torque by a factor of 3. So which gives me a huge advantage in axial flux. The same formula is more on the length for the radial flux, but that length cannot be used for a direct drive motor because the width is very limited in a wheel for a direct drive. So that is where the axial flux advantages come in. Now, also there are certain more advantages that we have. So I will not dwell deep into it, but after the dimensioning, I need to see that what is the winding factor in terms of phasor diagram that I have, whether I am able to achieve a high winding factor. So typically in a radial flux, the pole arrangement that I have, the concentrated winding I have, so I am able to achieve 0.9 winding factor, which is absolutely very good if you talk to any motor designer. I need to select the material, the core, whether the core is of powder manufactured, SMC material, grain-oriented steel or non-grain-oriented steel. I need to dimension it not in terms, not only in terms of area, but also in terms of volume, depending on torque speed curves I have. Then depending on that, I need to dimension the copper area. I need to factor in the fill factor that I am able to punch in. I need to go up and down in the voltage that is available from the manufacturer, whether it is higher voltage, lower voltage. So what kind of requirement he has, that plays on the current carrying capacity, that eventually carries on number of parallel path that I have. So I try to juggle all these balls which I have thrown in the air, and I make a trade-off for all these using rotor pole position, the frequency of the fundamental frequency of the converter of the drive that I have, the magnet that I need to use. So depending on these, I just do a trade-off, and then I come to finalization of stator slot that so these are the numbers of the stator slot. These many poles I have. This is the material I have to have, the kind binding I have. Once I get these 4 areas, then I get down to actual electromagnetic
I think
design.
we are
Yeah.
losing him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a very detailed slide. I don't think I have uh, luxury to go through it entirely, but it is just broadly covered in terms of requirement. Those are to be frozen, which I believe are already frozen from the previous slide that I've shown. Previous slide, Narasimha? Yeah, previous slide. Can you put on the yeah? No, one after this. Yeah.
Hello.
Next slide. Yeah. So this once I have done defined the requirement, then I have got to go to the electromagnetic design. I would have dimensioned these 4 factors, which is stator and rotor IDOD pole formation that I have. And then I get down to the actual simulation. So these illustration that I have shown is of a typical axial flux. The first on the left side, the illustration is a typical stator and the rotor design. Then on the second illustration, that is about the thermal calculation. And third is on the mechanical calculation that we have done. We have done various simulation on the stress, NVH, optimization of weight, fatigue. So, and thereafter I go back into loop, whether my torque speed curve as I defined in the first slide have been met. If it is not been met, I go back in kind of if else loop. and I keep going up and down on the EM, thermal and mechanical till the time my optimal design is done. Till the time I am satisfied with the efficiencies, which is on the bottom right corner, that has been done. So once I do that, then I get down to the prototyping. And I've just in the next slide, I have, as I spoke about the law of conservation of energy, I have, when I speak to some of the OEM, so sometimes they tell me, okay, I need for a two-wheeler or a bike or something, I need 100 kilometer speed, but I want to have a five kilowatt motor. So I have just put a brief uh, analysis on pure again law of motion, that suppose you take a weight of 250 kg and you want to, without any acceleration, you want to maintain it at a speed of 60, 80, 100 and 120, then what kind of power that you need, output power from the motor. uh, so that is being given as for 60 it is 2.1 kilowatt, for 80 it is 4.4, for 100 it is 8 kilowatt, and for 120 it is 13.4 kilowatt. Now, as we know that a radial flux motor, typically, if you look at the motors which have been supplied by US Motor and Chinese and a lot of other, so they are very efficient around rated RPM, which is around 40 to 50%, at times 60% of the peak RPM. Beyond that, when you go closer to the peak RPM, I have taken a very best case scenario wherein I believe that it is 70% efficient. But in some of the motor that I've seen, it even dips up to 50% also, 40-50%. So that is where your battery needs to sustain. So a typical case of 60 kilometer per hour, the battery should be able to provide a 2.7 kilowatt. And when I choose a 48 volt configuration, I need 57 amps of the current. Mind you, nominal voltage is the what you actually get, or maybe lesser than that, because initially when you charge, full charge is given and you straight away you connect, the battery voltage drops by 10% to 15% for lithium ion, and towards the higher RPM, it dips by another 5 to 10%. So uh, if I am able to sustain a 48 volt, 72 volt, or a 90 volt, this is the kind of current that I need to sustain that kind of 60 kilometer, 80 kilometer, 100 kilometer, or 120 kilometer. So I think some of the manufacturers, they have to be very clear that when it comes to sizing of a motor, you cannot pick up a arbitrarily figure that I need this particular torque, and I need so and so kilowatt of motor for a two-wheeler application, three-wheeler application, or four-wheeler application, because the physics doesn't allow. So I think this is a very important slide. And depending on the weight, you can also extrapolate for, it's a very simple, it is available in the internet also. Whatever weight that you give, you calculate a torque, you have a mechanical power, convert to electrical power, put in your efficiencies, put in your battery pack, dip in the voltage, and you will get a rating that you need to have. So that is how the physics plays. Yeah, thank you. I have finished.
Yeah. So just to basically, we wanted to share that maths essentially because we get many calls every day in which they will want, I want so and so kilowatt and I want something. We ask them two questions and we never get a call back. So we realize that this is a gap because everybody worked around a model in which they would pick up a motor and then design the vehicle. But ideally, it should be other way around, and that is the flexibility that we want to bring on the table. So that's why we specifically included this bit. This I will skip because I think we have overshot our time. I will just take about half a minute to run this video. I hope you're able to see. So this is we use an Opera tool for our simulation, and we have made our own script based on our work for the last 2 years. And axial flux design, for those who are having some exposure to EM design or design per se, is a 3D simulation, which requires a lot of modeling challenges. So we have optimized it to the manner in which we call it the Jarvis. I give my stator dimension, I give my rotor dimension, I play out my winding requirements, I give the dimension of the magnets, the thickness of the magnets, then I give the number of define my material properties of my stator and the winding. I give my voltage. So these are all analytically what we calculate as part of the process of motor dimensioning. I input the data and this model is ready. And this is exactly the time it takes in practice. Otherwise, this particular activity of making a model is at least nothing short of 2.5 to 3 months. But for a particular kind of motor, we have already done this, and going forward, we are doing it for all our motors. Now, what exactly are we prototyping and where we stand? This is the first prototype which we have done, tested, which is in a 72-volt configuration, 12-inch diameter, which can give you all the way up to 210 Newton meter. This is a modular design. The whole idea was to reduce the tooling cost. So in a 12-inch hub motor, which is conventionally the most widely used two-wheeler platform, and we can give entirely all these combinations and even anything in between. And going forward, whilst one motor can power any two-wheeler which is there, 2 of them or 4 of them can be taken on to platforms in the skateboard configuration to power even 4-wheelers. The second motor that we are prototyping is a 19-inch diameter motor, which is about 50 kilowatts. So 2 of these motors can power a small 30-seater bus, and 4 of them can take the load of the entire bus. So this is in the middle of testing. We intend to finish it by next month end. Moving ahead, we are already developing switch reluctance motors to take out the magnet from the equation. The other 2 motors are essentially magnet based. So this also the testing right now we are undertaking in IIT Delhi. And this is the radial flux, if you notice. Going forward, we are moving on to axial flux switch reluctance motor as well. This is an induction motor, radial flux, because somebody approached us for a lightweight cargo. So this is good enough for an L5 loader equivalent. This is under manufacturing, and thereafter it will get tested on a platform, and thereafter it will go for deployment. Now, this essentially covers what we are trying to do. We would be happy if you can reach out to us for powertrain solutions and validating motor design and audit. And we believe that charity should begin at home. So not as a this thing for ambassador for Tata. I have an EV going forward as an article of faith that the EVs are the future. So I think I have finished now. Harsh, you may please take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commander. That was a very, very, very detailed and presentation. I think you pretty much took over most of my questions, but
yeah.
That okay. So I'm just pretty much going to dive right into questions if that's okay. The first one is you highlighted some really great points about the skateboard design, right? The hub motor configuration. From a platform engineering standpoint, from active dynamics, it is definitely something that has a lot of benefits over conventional designs. But at the same time, can you highlight some drawbacks of the design or rather challenges that you see? Because if you're looking at even a two drive setup versus a 4-drive setup, right? You would need 2 motors versus 4, and just having that entire assembly within the wheel. So from that perspective, what sort of challenges do you see?
Lakra sir, you will take it, or you want me to?
Yeah. I'm okay to. Yeah. So I think as it was covered in the presentation also, manufacturing has been a challenge definitely. The cost has been the second challenge. So we have thought about all those issues. Manufacturing, we have figured out how to do. In fact, we are investing in tooling now. So once we invest in tooling, and for this tooling, I went to Europe. I went all around to figure out. I was told that there is somebody in US who's got patent. It cannot be done. So we have figured out our own ways how to do the stamping with the manufacturer who has done an excellent job. And we have gone through the preliminary process, and now we are investing. That is one part. The second part is the cost. So the cost wise also, as covered in the presentation, going forward, probably magnet will remove from the entire gambit, and we will just have the iron. So I think we are going to have entire capabilities in-house in India, and that is when we'll be able to bring down the cost, because right now we'll be dependent on magnet on other countries. So these are the two challenges. The third challenge, probably from the design point of view, is also been tackled is the design. As Narasimham has covered, or some of the students who do the axial flux design, it can only be done in 3D. It cannot be done in 2D simulation. Now 3D design needs a lot of processing power, a lot of investment in terms of software infra. That also we have done, as Jarvis has been covered. So what a modeling and static and dynamic simulation for anyone, probably it'll take 2-3 months to even come to that level. And we just, other than the simulation part or analysis part, modeling and rest of the setting up just takes 1 day or half a day dimension. So these are the three challenges that we believe that we have figured out. The third challenge that we see in terms of as a Indian R&D and manufacturer is that the volume, because right now the volumes are not there. So from the private side, we are trying to figure out people who can invest that kind of money to bring the cost down. We expect that the government should be able to invest not only with us or anyone who is doing a core R&D to solve the puzzle of volume, and they should I think the government should either put in that kind of money to take care of initial few years when the volumes are not there, and we are able to provide these motors at subsidy initially for 2-3 years and recover the cost maybe towards the later part when the volume kicks in. So these are the 2-3 areas. The last area, only with the external help, with either VC or the government or someone to kick in, I will be able to solve the cost matrix.
Just to add on to the point about the implementability. See,
Yes.
hub motors are a reality and they are being used. So coming back to the question, probably they were limited in scope, so the cost factor would have been high. But now, as I showed you, I mean, there are not only us, there are so many people all over the world right now who have probably we are yet to be there, but they have already crossed the bridge insofar as implementing and showcasing. So it is a structural challenge which has a definite end state in place. So that is all. Now we are moving to that particular stage of having our motors being fitted in platforms and running the show, and we are fairly confident that it will be achieved. It may not be the most optimized in the first go, but I'm sure the next iteration we would be there. And our endeavor is that in this year, 2021, we would definitely showcase it on an L5 equivalent platform in which the wheels would be powering the platform.
Fantastic. Okay, my next question is more to is sort of related to the patents, and I mean, whatever information you're able to share. But I did read somewhere that you were that just the idea was that you would be able to provide up to 95% regen efficiency with these motors. Is it possible for you to brief on that a little bit, or is that something that's very proprietary at the moment?
No, we will share some part of it. Essentially, it's I mean, it's not 95% regen as in see in a motor when you use electrical braking, that is how there is an energy loss which is a waste. So when I say 95%, it is the electrical braking that you are employing which gets lost. So typically, like a motor has a unique RPM or a small band of RPM where it is more efficient. So typically when you have to do regen, what exactly you're doing is when you have, say, I will just take a case of magnet motors because they are the most prevalent. Since there is a magnet and there is a motion in place. So again, laws of physics, magnetic lines of force is there, a conductor is there which is cutting, and if you put a load, a current is generated. So now that particular current is generated in a small band at which it is maximum, and other places it tapers off like a bell curve. So our patent is essentially to figure out a way in which I am having a larger band so that I am able to recover more cost. So as a proof of concept, we have simulated the design. However, this design was not a permanent magnet-based motor. So our journey involved mastering the stator, which is now done. Now we will be moving ahead when we are doing our work on reluctance motor, we will be working on the patent part of it. So essentially, just to give you an analogy, regenerative braking has been there in locomotives for ages because they have a predictive path. So they know that they're going to brake, say 10 kilometers before the station, they will start applying brakes, which will maybe 80%, then it will keep on increasing. So in a predictive path, they are able to harness the energy back. And we are trying to get a very, very agile mechanism which reduces the unpredictable braking on the roads and employ. And this would be more topical for the bigger vehicles, not for two-wheeler. Two-wheeler, whatever regenerative is just a notional energy you will get, and it does not meet the cost matrix. And the second is probably more interesting to AAM is we are working on e-axles have already started coming into the market. We are working on a novel concept of a e-axle in which we would be able to give much higher efficiencies. That it is still into making, so I probably would, and we have labeled it Sudarshan Chakra because as the all-potent Sudarshan Chakra, which is there mythologically, we want to make an axial flux motor as a Sudarshan Chakra and power the e-axles going forward. So which we probably would be in a better position to share maybe a few months down the road when at least we have filed the initial patent and some groundwork is done.
Yeah, and in fact, I would like to add a bit to the technically as covered by Commander Narasimha. It is possible. There is no doubt about it on this thing. But coming back to the business side of it, and I will be very candid with you. So whatever we said, it's a very, very high call in terms of because this would for 95% regenerating. This can only be enabled by the certification agency, wherein it is braking by wire. So when I have 95% regenerative braking, ideally I would like to brake using a motorized generator, and there is no brake. So brake probably are only there as a emergency measure. So these needs a lot of regulation changes in terms of world over, not only in India,
Yes.
wherein you have no brakes. So probably as an idea, theoretical, technically possible done, but from the business point of view, I'll be candid here that when we got down to motor design, we went around, we met a lot of people, OEMs, we found even the basic R&D in motor is missing. So we realized that probably it is a too high a call. First, let me give what probably the country does not have. The very basic, we have been making induction motors, but beyond that, there is nothing that was available in the country. People have been struggling with a very, very basic BLDC radial flux motor. So it is a. I think we will work on it, but the market is not ready for such a thought. So we'll rather go with the market whenever the market.
Yeah, essentially, just to add, digital cameras have been there on cars for, I don't know now, years. I mean, they are far more better, but you still have a rear view mirror and a rear view glasses. So the point is there are so many dynamics in play, but I guess, yeah, world is changing. So technology will always find its way.
Right. Oh yeah, especially when it comes to drive-by-wire systems.
Yes,
So far,
yes,
everything
yes.
has backup, so it
Yes.
makes sense. Okay. The next question is a little bit loaded. I hope that's okay. So when it comes to the startup, eco space, right, or ecosystem rather, verification and validation, especially in the Indian side of things, tend to be swept under the rug, right? Like, I mean, we've seen a lot of products out there which may seem very nice from a design perspective, but may actually not have been validated on road. So how are you being different in that sense?
See, I mean, the point is, as we see, we have still not we have not claimed anything which is very, very out of context, and our approach has been absolutely nuanced, and we are very clear that startup journeys are difficult. You need to be resilient, and probably God has been kind. We definitely count ourselves among the most fortunate of starters. I mean, let me be very candid, because in India, if you look anywhere, things are all majorly service oriented, where you do a small trailer and then you build up. R&D based startups need investment upfront, and their journey is very, very tough. So with that concept, if you see, we are very clear that any development has to happen with the vehicle manufacturer along with you. Since we had the legs, we have gone ahead and proved a POC. But now going forward after the POC, the motors that we are now making for it to be tried on a platform is in consultation with the OEM. So that, or a vehicle startup who knows what it takes to run a vehicle. So that's why we are still not saying that, yes, we have said that this is available and we are reaching out for homologation and proving. So we have gone step by step. And as Lakra sir highlighted on the bit of the regenerative braking, whilst as a concept, it's an IP that I have, but I know there is time for it. So we have taken care of not claiming a lot, but taking it step by step. So that is what has helped us so far, because now I have a product on board and we know there is applicability. So we are letting in percolate down to the users to take it and take it to the next level. So that's how we have ensured that the validation bit and acceptability goes hand in hand. And it is not something which is very, very offset, wherein you claim something and you finally deliver something entirely different.
Makes perfect sense. If I may expand a little bit on that question, if you don't mind. You mentioned a good point about having OEMs or people who actually are working in the vehicle validation or vehicle side of things to be able to validate or help prove the POC. You are, of course, open to OEMs, but would you, and again, this is for the larger audience, would you be open to even private players or R&D firms who may be able to, who work on, who work on POCs of their own, but the motor could be part of a vehicle design for that matter, and could,
Absolutely,
like, both things could be validated at the same time?
absolutely. See, the thing is, please understand, it is to be used in a vehicle. I mean, vehicle has got 100 parts, and now motor is just one part of it. I am enabling it to be power dense, but there is a whole lot of matrix finally which has to fall in place. So it doesn't make sense that I make an insanely powerful motor, which at the end of it, the vehicle is not able to handle. So as a proof of concept is to establish your credentials that yes, this is doable. But going forward, that particular input needs to come in from the vehicle. See, this is what that's why we put that slide out about motor dimensioning. I cannot dictate what a vehicle should look like. It has to be other way around. So now, whether so far the model has been you picked up a motor and you designed a vehicle, if that is also fine enough, that is the journey we are taking now. That okay, I will put out certain set motor configurations, which if somebody doesn't want to do the bulwark and happy to take it forward is fine. Otherwise, we are absolutely, in fact, we would be more keen to do what you suggested in a model that, okay, we want this, you give us this, and we get this on the table, you bring this on the table. That is probably the best way to optimize the entire end product in the hand of the customer, because the motor is just one part of it. So the entire thing as a package to be more attractive needs to go the way that you have said, and we are absolutely open for that.
Yeah, and in fact, just to add on to there, see, we are taking a lot of simulation help, not only in EM design, but in structure design, in thermal design. So we believe that we will give a product which is very, very validated from the simulation world and the POC world. But beyond that, the OEM has to decide that what kind of power or torque or characteristics is what. And we will be able to, like, coming back to AF90, we will be able to cover entire segment of two-wheeler, whether it is scooter or bike or even L5 loader, using the same motor. And cost we'll figure out, it will be at par with whatever people have been getting from outside. So that is what we have it on table. But beyond that, it has to be tried. We are parallelly doing rigorous testing. We are making our own platform, in fact, for a two-wheeler. Silently, we'll prove it. Probably 2-3 months that we'll showcase that vehicle also, just to prove our point that it is a vehicle validated. But ideally, we would like to go with the OEM. Even the IP, we don't. In fact, we are open about IP also. We don't mind sharing. Anybody who can make it, we will release the IP also.
Fantastic. No, that's great, because there are firms out there that maybe not have that sort of presence, but are working on a lot of R&D work in this space. So that's very great that you're open to something like that.
So in the meantime, Keshav sir, if you are there, I think you have a question you can ask.
I can see the question. Probably I'll take it.
I will elaborate a bit, Commander Krishna Narasimhan. I will elaborate a bit.
Yeah, please.
I come from the background of Tata Motors of four-wheelers and launching of Tata Ace, and I've been service head for some time, and
Great,
before I
sir.
was manufacturing. Now I am into a company called Ramakrishna Forging. We are trying to diversify into EV powertrain.
Sir.
And perhaps after the meeting, I may get in touch with you. The question
Yes.
I'm trying to put you in front of you, that I'm very obsessed with this word called last mile transportation.
Yes.
And I still feel that we have not crossed the L5 barrier so far. Even in L5, we have not been very successful. This more than a question, is a request to you. Perhaps I will come back to you again. That what are you thinking for the small commercial vehicle which has torque say up to 200 Newton meters? I'm not talking of power now, because torque is one in the automotive segment, and I've been there for last 3 decades. It drives the whole thing, because suddenly in India you have speed breakers and you have to climb what you call gradient and things like that.
Yes.
So we talking to you post this meeting again, mostly in this range, 100 to 200 Newton meters, and how fast we can make it commercial.
Okay, I will probably add just two bits that probably will. If you see, we had put one induction motor. Now that is because conventionally people are happy using a reduction gear and doing it. So somebody came with a problem statement that no, I want to do this. So we went ahead and did that. Now coming specifically back to the commercial loader, typically all the loaders will have a differential at the back. So we are looking at giving a motor there which would provide the torque, as you said, in a particular form factor in which the efficiency would be maybe at least 25% higher than the conventional motors that they are using. So that is what we are working on. And in fact, when I mentioned about two of the motors powering something equivalent to an L5, this is somebody who's already doing it. And they've been running and showcasing their product using Chinese hub motors, which is what we are now replacing. So this torque bit is definitely manageable when it comes to L5 segment. And the e-axle which we are developing is something which, in fact, since you mentioned Tata Motors, we had one round of, we did reach out to them for giving us certain details. So probably, as you said, let's connect, because right now we are looking the matrix to which we should design our e-axle. Probably I have just put in our email IDs on the chat. I think we should connect, and definitely we can take it forward. It can be done. We have already done the modeling, and the details we can share with you directly.
Thank you so much, and I would congratulate both of you, because you have done a good job. You have been doing a good job, and probably later we can connect again. I just want to congratulate you. And I have many friends in Navy, and I have seen them, going after dam, doing wonderful things after serving the nation. I want just to congratulate Commander Lakra and yourself once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You've been very gracious. I appreciate it.
One question, which is, obviously what is suited for Indian conditions. So when we talk about two-wheelers in India, is it the SRM? Is it the classic hub motor? Is it the induction motor? What is that holy grail?
I don't think even God can answer that. Whatever sells in the market will suit.
I would like to the induction motor, ideally, unless you use it with gearbox, are out. So for two-wheeler, induction motor, they cannot give starting torque. So the starting torque can only come from a permanent magnet, which has got a ready torque available from the magnet, or SRM configuration using the reluctance, how the rotor is stopped. There is some way to find out that you all end up with good starting torque. Not as good as permanent magnet, but it can meet the requirement very well. So going forward for India, because I've been studying this subject also, we have got a lot of dysprosium reserves, which are very important ingredient for neodymium magnets. We have got everything that raw material for the rare earth elements. Unfortunately, we don't have the tech and the processing which can match with the Chinese tech and processing in terms of cost only. But it has been available. So going forward, unless we find rare earth alternative, do the processing here, unfortunately, we only have option for going with SRM or synchronous reluctance motor. So SRM, and I think going forward, either we figure out our rare earth processing or we go with reluctance techniques with SRM or reluctance with synchronous or switch, either of them.
That is essentially to remove the magnet from the equation, and they do provide a certain ruggedness, which is probably a step beyond the permanent magnet. But see, no technology is good or bad. It is how it is implemented and how it gets embraced. So I think I'm sure if China has got so many reserves, they cannot not do with selling those products. So I think more importantly, it is the business requirements that will drive, especially for large scale adoption. For specific applications, one may choose one over the other, but ultimately the cost matrix will be the king. So, but yes, whatever is the king, we can enable the journey to reach the king. I mean, I can only put it that way.
What we anticipate is there could be a retrofitment market of motors that may happen, because a lot of BLDCs may already be out there, which can potentially be replaced by low cost offerings in the future.
I guess the retrofit market is not exactly linked with the powertrain per se, because it's the platform. And ultimately, if you see, yesterday or day before, somebody gave me a call from Bangalore. He said, I am running an Indica for 15 years. And who's the government to tell me that the scrappage policy is there and you need to junk it? He said, when my parents become old, I don't put them onto the road, which is a valid point. But he said, if I have maintained a vehicle, I should have an option. If required, I'll go to the court. So there are passionate people like that also. So essentially, a retrofit market, as we see, would be there in the transition, but thereafter, we really don't know.
So what I'm talking about, retrofitment of motor, a new motor onto an existing EV.
That also has got certain challenges. See, you need to replace a motor exactly in the similar to what you're replacing. Right. So again, you need to get it, the form factor. So there are certain challenges. As long as it works, it is fine. But the point is, how much benefit will it eke out is a big question mark. I mean, if you already have a permanent magnet motor, which is BLDC, and you are giving X efficiency, and you're investing again, it has to give you that ROI. Otherwise, it just not make sense, because it will be as good. The advantage of efficiency may not be more than a factor of 5 to 10% max. Depending on how much you exploit it, it is again left to the choice of the individual, actually.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Commander Narasimhan. Thanks, Commander Lakra, for this very good detailing. And we are obviously again glad to host you this morning. And we'll ensure that we send out the recordings to you as well as to everyone who has attended. So thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Shekhar.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.